Good morning and thank you. Thank you, Bush. Thank you, Walter, and all the Joint Adventures team for having me here. I'm very honored to meet you. You are the future generation of dance artists who I hope to collaborate in some ways in the future. Yeah, I come from Italy. I've been working for 16 years in a municipality. It's the only city council, I guess, in Europe that runs directly a multidisciplinary festival and a dance house. So I've been involved in many programs, projects, commissions of dance. And from September, I will step into a new journey with Aerowaves, where with Elisabetta Bisaro, I will be the co-director of the network that supports the international development of young career dance makers. I would like to propose, well, first of all, English is not my native language, so if you don't understand or something that I say doesn't make sense, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and ask me to re-articulate or re-explain, and with the help of Bush, we'll make it. I would like to propose that we interact sometimes, if that's okay, and I would like to invite you to start with some physical answers to some questions, meaning we're going to move in the space according to yes and no. You've done it before, right? I'll try to share questions that are not too boring, so we may use this space. Would you mind to bring your stuff behind the camera? So I'm going to share with you a list of questions. Whenever your answer is going to be yes or close to a yes, come to this wall. Whenever the answer is going to be no, please come to the radiators. You're invited to participate if you want. It's for everyone. So we'll start from the center, if that's okay. A bit louder. Thank you. So, have you chosen the art form of dance? Yeah. According to the degree of yes or no, you can move in the space. Place yourself in the space. And there's no right or wrong answer, of course. Has the art form of dance chosen you? Do you live in the country where you're born? Are you in contact with the dance scene in the country where you're born? Do you have any collaborations with the dance scene in the country where you're born? Do you have any professional collaborations in the country where you live?
What do you mean professional? It's open?
Maybe you can relate it to a contract. I may use some words that are, interpretable, so please ask. Do you use the word dance to share with others what you do? Do you think we should always use the word dance to share with others what we do? Do your neighbors know you are a professional dance artist or on the way to be a professional? Do your neighbors, do your neighbors know? Do you follow your intuitions in the process of creations? Do you follow your intuitions when you choose initiatives, activities, projects to be involved in? Do you follow your intuition when you choose initiatives, projects, activities to be involved in? Do you have criteria to identify beauty and excellence in dance? I'm sure in your path of studies, you talk also about the programming of dance, or you witness the programming of dance, right? Sometimes. Yeah. In that context, do you have criteria to identify what could be shared with the general public? Yeah. When you think of a dance program, do you have some criteria to think what could be, in a way, universally shared with general public? Based on your experience? With programming, with attending programs.
With like educational programs. No.
With that dance programs of a festival, yeah. So if you see a program of a festival, would you think that work is for general public, that work is for specific publics? Do you have criteria to identify that? Okay, now is the big one. In your context and experience, are the dance practices for communities and non-professionals different from what inhabits stages and festival programs? Listen well, in your context and experience, are the dance practices that are offered to non-professional or communities different from what inhabits the stages and the festival programs? And when you attend a dance show, in the context you live, study, and work in, do you recognize most of the people around you? In the context where you live, when you go to a dance show, do you recognize most of the people in the audience with you? Is this problematic for you? If I talk about outreach programs, do you have an idea of what I'm talking about? It means, help me, Bush, if I say something blaspheme. It means any programs, any initiatives that is aimed at reaching people that are not familiar with dance, with contemporary dance. So if I say outreach programs, I mean those activities that people put in place, both the artists and the organizations, to connect with people that are not familiar with dance. Can we go with that? Yeah. Okay, do you think you need specific expertise to develop outreach programs in the context you live in? Have you ever been inspired by an outreach program developed by a dance institution or organization? Have you ever been inspired by the outreach approach developed by museums, galleries, or other cultural institutions? Do you think that a dance performance conceived and made for the general audience could be presented also for young audience aged 8, 18, as it is? Do you know that when you dance, you activate 21 senses? They're available, you Google that, you will find. Or you look for some people that are doing research on that. I will talk about it. Have you experienced dance performances providing multiple sensorial ways of access? Do you think that embodying an artist, a dance artist's practice, would help you to connect more with their work?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, do you think that embodying an artist's practice, a dance artist's practice, would help you to connect more with the work of that artist? Yes, no, middle? It's up to you. Do you think that introductional talks with audiences would facilitate the access to a dance work? Is my English okay? Yeah, thank you. Do you think that introductional physical practices would facilitate the access to a dance artist's work? It's always related to a show, huh, in this case. Have you ever been part of an event where the audience were active participants? Have you been involved in creative processes of co-creation between professionals? Have you been involved in processes of co-creation between professionals?
In the same discipline or different?
Up to you. Do you think that an horizontal, respectful, democratic process of co-creation is possible?
Again, maybe?
Do you think that a democratic, horizontal, respectful process of co-creation is possible? So yes, is here, maybe, no. Have you been actively involved in processes of co-creation with professionals and non-professionals? And based on your experience or intuitions, do you think that working with non-professionals could inform your artistic practice? Do you think that dance curators and organizers are accessible in the context you live in? Sometimes. And again, in your context, but also in the international context, according to your experience, is it easy to have dialogues with dance curators and programmers? Dialogues. Have you experienced a dance residency? Residency. The topic of today. It is, a definition is not easy. It's a place and time given, this is my definition, is a place and time offered to artists to develop a creative research, to start. No, that's good. Have you experienced a dance residency abroad? Based on your experience, but also your intuitions, do you think that the engagement of communities, local communities, should always be part of a creative residency? Yes, do you think, based on your experience or intuitions, that the engagement of local communities should always be part of a creative residency? Do you think that theaters are still the places where to program dance? Do you think that theaters are still the places where to program dance? Can you facilitate dialogues between artists and audiences?
Personally or generally?
Generally. Whatever that means. Do you have a practice to articulate critical responses and feedback? Do you have a practice to articulate critical responses and feedback? Do you have a practice to share critical responses and feedback? When attending dance initiatives, it could be shows, but also workshops, anything, in the context you live in and work, Have you noticed the absence of specific people or groups? And in answering to this question, do you have a specific group in mind? Now we're going to change. We go back to the center, if that's okay. When the answer is yes, we lay on the floor. When it's no, we stand. And when it's in between, you find a way to be in between. Maybe let's spread out a bit. So, is the context you live in multicultural? Yes is down, no is up. Is the context you live in multicultural? Is the dance community there multicultural? Is the audience you meet at local level multicultural? You're jumping up. Is the audience you meet at local level intergenerational, meaning of different generations? The audience. Do you think that dance can change people's lives? Do you think that dance could have a social impact, keeping its artistic integrity? Do you think dance could have a social impact, keeping its artistic integrity? Do you think that dance can really contribute to the well-being of societies? And now I would like to ask you to stand up. I'm going to ask you a question, and I will ask you to respond with movements. There's no right or wrong and no judgment. Can you describe a dancer's knowledge? We're going to go back to yes and no. Yes there, no there. So, can you describe with words a dancer's knowledge? Do you think dance is a human right? Last question. Are you a dance activist? Thank you. Thank you so much. We're gonna work in a circle if you want, sitting on the floor or laying on the floor. The next session, I would like to propose that I share some personal experiences in developing residencies and in the context where I live. So please take it as a sort of case study and as one of the millions of possibilities. And whilst I will talk, there will be some photos that will go randomly that will give you a glimpse of what kind of context that is. And I will probably refer to some projects or programs, and you will receive from Laura or Elisa some links that you can check. And there's also some publications that are downloadable free of charge in those contexts, so you may use them in the future. Yes?
Would it be possible to also share the questions you posed now?
I think they've been recorded, but I can share them with you. Yeah? Do you need a pause? Or can we go on? We can go on. So let's find ourselves in a circle. Again, if I say something that is not clear, please raise your hands and ask. You will see pictures that relate to the presentations of some shows, the engagement of citizens of the city I work with, educational activities, discussions, all the possible things that we've been trying to develop to root the culture of dance in a place where until 2006 there was no culture of contemporary dance. There was dance, but it was mainly related to ballet or the big events, and there was not a local scene of artists. A lot of them had to travel abroad to study. They would get their professional qualifications and then get jobs everywhere, and only at a later stage eventually come back. So when I started to work for this municipality, the city of Bassano del Grappa, I took inspiration from the art form of dance and the fact that it's multi-layered. So when you are doing one thing, you're activating 25 other things. As an art form, it has different effects, impacts, outcomes. And so do the activities that we can build around one action. So if we talk about the residencies, first of all, the city doesn't have a one building. It's very historical, so building a new building is quite a thing in a place where when you start to dig, you find layers of history, and any new work would be stopped for 10 years until the archaeologists have taken out all the things that are under the surface. So we started to work transforming some spaces into spaces that could be used by dance artists. So a lot of churches that were not in use anymore became the stage for practices. A lot of old palaces, along with some theaters. Even a distillery, a factory, became a space where we could offer residencies and do activities. So there's a yearly program that lasts 90 days with different disciplines: music, theater, opera, and dance. And then there is a yearly long program where we invite artists to come to research, to develop works, to connect with our people, to contribute to the professional development of dance artists that are present in our territory. So every time we host artists or groups or companies, we try to co-design the period of time they will spend there. And more often, after the pandemic, a lot of artists ask not to work only in a studio or in a theater. They often ask to work, for instance, in nature, or they ask to work with specific groups of citizens because they are developing that as a concept, but also because they know that in that context, in that frame, they are invited to take the risks they would never take in their home countries. So this village in the northeast of Italy is a place where we often encourage artists to try out, to really experiment. And they have the possibility to encounter people. They're not dance experts. They are citizens that are invited to meet artists at work in the context of what we call sharings, where we don't expect that they present a show, but that they take the opportunity to encounter people that don't know anything about their work and their research, to share impressions, to share any sort of narratives that whatever is shared may evoke. And this comes from the strong belief that we value the encounters between dance artists and the people that live in our territory. And thanks to the presence of dance artists, we've been able to develop many initiatives. There is an initiative that is called Dance Well, and you will receive a link, and it started in 2013 as an initiative for people who live with Parkinson's. Parkinson's is a neurological disease that impacts the mobility of people. We offer regular dance classes every Mondays and Fridays in the museum of the city, and around 70 people show up every Mondays and Fridays. And they are not all living with Parkinson's. It's an initiative that has been open to the wider communities, but they became a group. They became friends. They became very solidal. They help each other when one needs a car lift, and they develop a passion for dance. So they practice dance regularly, but they are also curious to see dance. So whenever there is an artist in residency, they are eager to meet that artist, to see how they work, to know their practice, to get to know what triggers their mind. And they often participate to these sharings, and they are able to articulate their responses to what they've seen with a very respectful attitude and a constructive approach, meaning that they are aware that they're not there to vomit in front of an artist their, gut feelings, but they are there to somehow support the work in progress and the development, as if they are contributing to make the most amazing masterpiece of dance of the 21st century. So this is just an example to share with you the value of connecting the research, the experiments, the development of the culture of dance with local communities, and how they can connect and at some stages inform the practice of dance artists. Every year we commission to some professional artists, choreographers, a work with those dance-well dancers that want to be exposed to the public. Those creations take some time, and then they are presented in the festival program. And this helps us to somehow share with our audience the idea that we can create alternative definitions of beauty and excellence in dance. In the moment that a body that is not stereotyped, that is not conforming to the stereotypes of dance, is inhabiting a professional stage, we offer to the audience a new possibility to see beauty in what may considered, forgive me the word, a monster in other contexts. And this has a huge impact in inviting people that feel discouraged to approach dance to come to dance initiatives, both practices and performances. This work has been done years ago when Italy was under the threat of the most extreme right parties, into a project called Migrant Bodies Moving Borders, where we invited asylum seekers and refugees coming mainly from Africa to meet our communities, to enter in dialogue with our citizens through the practice of dance. And in that context, we found out that, for instance, in our small village, already 2 asylum seekers were professional dancers in their home countries. But here, they would have been put to learn how to be a cook or a cleaner. Nobody had ever asked them what was their background and if they had any artistic desires. So through them, we had, for the first time in our context, 2 people of color becoming teachers, dance teachers. And so we invited them to go, for instance, in some educational programs that we do in the schools, and imagine the reaction of kids that are multicultural in a classroom, and they see for the first time somebody that is teaching and has the same skin color. It was huge. And this was happening in the moment where our government was putting all the restrictions towards immigration. This put us in a highly political context. In fact, we ended up in the news, in the papers, as the enemy that was going against the law because we were spending money in the illegal commerce from Africa. And actually, we realized how important it was to continue and to somehow support these processes that proved to help the cohesion. When the 2 artists of color went to teach in the Dance Well classes, our old ladies after the class invited them in the most posh cafe of the city to have a cappuccino, and that became visible. Imagine the political statement of these bourgeois women having a cappuccino with somebody that from that moment on was recognized by the city as an artist and not as an illegal comer. So despite our will, we didn't want to be political, but the action, the initiative had a political impact, and it still has a political impact. Scientists came to study the fact that Lamin, one of our teachers, who's been trained by his grandmother in animistic practices, what in other contexts is called voodoo, and his grandfather sent him to the imam school because he's Muslim. So he has this double, almost contradictive nature. And he came to teach, and he brought his friends with the drums, and they started to share a ritual that they do in his home country, which is the passage of age from teenage to adult for men. And he simplified this ritual, which is a dance, a collective dance, for our people, because with Parkinson's, over 60s, with different mobility issues, he didn't want to hurt them. So when the class started in a circle, people started to jump, And then they were invited to go in the center to do a sequence and to go back. And it kept repeating, whenever you're tired, please stop. Guess what? Nobody stopped. There were two scientists, they were shocked. They were telling me, we should notice heart attacks here. And look at them, they're jumping for 40 minutes non-stop. They were all sweat, all destroyed. And from there, these scientists started to study what is the collective impact, what is the collective body activating in an empathic way, which then becomes physical when you are dancing together. And this became part of a research that is still going on around individual and collective impacts that dance has on people. So that illegal commerce is inspiring a scientific research by scientists, neurologists that are studying what have we lost from our past through the Catholic restrictions, and can we recover the ritual dances that in the past probably our ancestors were practicing together. That gave us the go to start to investigate with other organizations in Europe what are the skills that dance develops on people, both the professional and the non-professional. By skills, I mean the abilities. It's not about the knowledge and the competence, but it's more the abilities. And there is the first publication of this journey in a project called Empowering Dance. And again, Laura will send you the link. You can download it, and you can read a map where it says from the investigation on 5 dance practices that professional dancers share with communities. What is it that you activate when you dance? And I think in your context of studies, it might inspire you to find language sometimes for the knowledge that you own, for the knowledge that is embodied in yourself, to describe what you may be able to offer and share with others. So it can be used both as a map of knowledge, but also as a glossary to find words that you connect to describe what you do or the potentials of what you do. And there will be a new publication from September available on that website. So keep an eye on that if you're interested. So through dance, we've been very much in dialogue with a big network of dance houses called the European Dance House Network. I'm sure somebody should have spoken about it before me.
Lena talked about it on the first day.
Fantastic. So with some of these members and the members of another network, Aerowaves, that supports the visibility of works of young career choreographers internationally, with partners of these networks, we built several projects that are aimed at supporting research, artistic development through international exchanges, through the fact that you might be invited to live for a period abroad, encounter a different ecology, be in another context, learn something about yourself, develop with others new knowledge. And this has been possible through the supports of the European Union funds. The famous European Union projects, I'm sure you heard about it, or you might have encountered the word Erasmus. Yeah, that's a program of the European Union that supports mobility, but there are many other programs. And so through them, a lot of organizations and companies and now individuals can have supports to develop knowledge that you cannot build alone at local level, but you can build collectively. So a lot of residencies that we've been hosting have been part of these projects, have been supported. And the aim of these journeys is not only to support a creative process, the creation, for instance, of a show or the development of a practice, but is also to build a collective knowledge. And I think at the time we live in, or in the time we live in, yes, collective responses can be crucial to the complexity of questions we're facing. So how do we work collectively is the big question. And how can different ways of co-designing initiatives support this collectiveness? Through the pandemic time, we had to stop our residency program, we had to stop our dance well classes, we had to stop a lot of initiatives that were taking place in the physical space. But we started immediately from day 2 to connect with people and inhabit what we call the digital space, which has a different way of being organized. Like the timing, the rhythm in the digital space is different than physical space, we all know that. But how can you design and share a dance class in the digital space? How can you design and share a creative process when the choreographer is in Israel and the dancers are in Italy? Or when the choreographer is in New York or in Zimbabwe and the dancers are in Italy? Well, we learned by doing. We didn't know how to do that. And a high level of trust and dialogues made it possible. I think in the digital space, there were more opportunities to have an horizontal way of working, like a lot of the vertical, hierarchical structures that you have when you are invited in the office of a programmer that sits on the other side of the desks and tells you what they would like you to do or invite you to share what you would like to do, somehow take another form when you are, for instance, in a Zoom conversation and you are in the same size of squares. And this somehow happened and had a huge impact in the way we developed some initiatives and creative processes that took place later on in the real space. So again, how do we combine the use of physical space and digital space? How do we build relationships, and what kind of power dynamics do we put in this relationship is the big topic of research at the moment, and the big theme on how to develop the future. And I guess you are probably going to be working in contexts where the physical, the digital, and the hybrid spaces will coexist. And this will probably bring a new complexity in organizing bodies in time and space when the concept of space is so different. But it's also an opportunity. So this is another philosophical approach. Can limits become opportunities? Can we find solutions we would never think of if we dig deep in a limit and not just escape from it? I don't know. And time is crucial in the development of relationships with artists. I really think that the longevity of a relationship can bring many opportunities. Of course, you cannot build a longevous relationship with all the artists you encounter. You need to, at some point, meet choose each other and so on. But the fact that an artist could be invited back to our city more times has had a huge impact in the way artists could bring different proposals, different initiatives, different activities. Sometimes they would come to create a show, sometimes they would come to lead a workshop, sometimes they would come to present another show, and every time they would meet again citizens, audiences, new people, and build their own relationships there. So for me, this is a value, the fact that you don't invite just once an artist, but you build together a path, because there's the potentials that this journey can inform from the different directions, the outcomes. The value of relationship is the other thing. How do you take care of that relationship, even if you're not in the same physical space all the time? How do you build, the dialogue and the connection? So the care is another key word when we think of residencies, but it's also the care that you may address to the people, the citizens that you want to involve. So are we working, and I use the plural because the artists play a role, not only the international ones that come, but sometimes the local artists. Are we able to build a system where we're not just using groups when we need them to show up, but are we able to build a system of relationship where there's a mutual exchange, there's a trust, and there's a system of values that really takes care of this relationship? And I think dance organizations cannot do that alone. And I think the more there's a collaboration with local artists sometimes, the more you can deeply root in a society. And that's where the question, do you think that working with non-professionals can inspire your practice, comes from? Because I personally think it can. And when we work with communities, we tend to highlight all the times that we're doing artistic practices. We are aware that they have a huge impact on people's life. Imagine people with Parkinson's. With that disease, when it comes at early stage, people don't leave their homes, because when the tremor happen in the street, they're stopped by the police. They think they're drunk. It happens everywhere. So they isolate themselves. And suddenly, with this dance initiative, they're coming back. They come to the museum. Nobody's asking them, do you have Parkinson's or not? We see it, but we never talk about it unless they want. And they can dance and enjoy together. They make new friends. So they go back to a sort of, social life. We know that it has a therapeutic impact, the scientists tell us. We know that it has a social impact. We know that it's going to be, one of the tick in the box for the well-being. This is a word that you will encounter in the next 5 or 10 years of your professional life everywhere. We try to keep in mind that what we do is an artistic practice, and knowing that in some countries in Europe, the artistic practices for communities are different from the artistic practices that are shared among professionals, we decided to go for the same line of work. So if you are coming to Bassano and developing a new research on something with your collective or with your colleagues, we may invite you to share that practice with these people and to find together the how-to. So we wouldn't ask you to bring another subject or to do something entertaining to give them joy and fun, but to really stay connected to the integrity of your work and find together how to. There may be the need to contextualize that practice, but then these people will have the huge gift of being physically connected to your work and to have, a sort of entryway when one day they will see your work on stage.
Could you talk a little bit about the decision with the Parkinson's work to cite it not in a therapeutic physical context? I don't know if very inspired.
Yes, I can be very honest with you. When I thought of bringing this initiative, it was already done in many parts of the world. The first ones that I know of are the members of the Mark Morris Company in New York that started to work with people living with Parkinson's and noticing how dancing could really have an impact on the body's mind, emotions of those people. So when I saw them, it was in a context where there was David Leventhal teaching in a studio where everybody had chairs, and there was only people living with Parkinson's and their family members. So when I thought of contextualizing that back home, I thought, first of all, let's open the group, because you could see the youngest person with Parkinson looking constantly at the one that had the most advanced stage of the illness. There was a suffering comparison all the times. So I thought maybe if the group is mixed, it's easier not to avoid that. Second, if I would place that in a studio, everybody in Italy would call this dance therapy, and that would make me really upset. So I said, what is the place in Italy where whatever you do is considered art? A museum. A museum legitimates, right? And then immediately with that consideration, I realized that whatever is around you in a museum can become a source of inspiration. So in the practice of dance for people living with Parkinson's, you need to trigger the motivation to dance. So you use elements to create an imaginative journey, imaginary journey, forgive me, and use imagination to activate the body and the movements. So what you may experience in one of those classes is that you see a person coming that is probably, very rigid, and by the end of the class, they're blossoming and stretching and doing incredible things through their imagination and through the self-motivating power of addressing the bodies in places they would never reach with a physiotherapist. So that's why the museum. But also, we learned a lot. The dance world teachers go through a training, and they actually use the elements of that training to then teach to professionals, to kids, and so on. So there's a completely shift in the way you approach a pedagogic journey, and there's a use of words that is very carefully thought. A word can generate a completely different outcome. So how do you use word? How you articulate the idea, the task. And we use a lot the instant composition and choreographic scores. And so the dance world teachers prepare those things, and each of them have their own practice. We are very happy when they bring different sort of dance languages. So there's not a method, there's an approach, there's an agenda behind the construction of a class where you need to do certain things, like activating the extensions of the body, activating the imaginatory part, create climax, create a rhythm, create rhythmic structures that can displace a body that neurologically is messed up, and so on and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that from that practice, a lot of artists take new inputs. And I can give you an example. There's an artist in Israel called Yasmin Goder that has developed a group of artists and initiatives around the country. And she's built the last 4 shows from the experiences she had in working with scientists and people living with Parkinson's. And she's made a trilogy of works related to empathy. I think she was here in Munich lately, or she will be here in Munich. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
There is someone that is already, have been already a professional dancer.
In this, they're all professional dancers, the teachers, or the Parkinson's.
No,
The Parkinson's, yes, we have a couple of women that were professional dancers. Yeah. Yes.
Are the people with Parkinson's joining mostly local? I'm asking because my grandma actually has Parkinson's, and I gave her a DVD from the Parkinson's Can Dance from the Ballet Voice in London.
Yeah.
And it's like the score based, and she's really, for her, it's really precious. So I don't know, can people from outside join? Or?
Yeah, at the moment, this initiative is active in 10 Italian cities, but we are in dialogue with people in Freiburg. For instance, Monica Gillette is one of those who have developed here. And other countries, Israel, the Netherlands. We're going to start a project supported by the European Union that will develop this furthermore in Lithuania, Czech Republic, Hamburg, France. But yeah, if you check, you will have a link with all the things, and there will be a video that explains. I put 2 videos in there for you. One is an explanation of what it is, and it talks a lot about the relation with the artists that come for residencies, because they meet these communities. And then there's the voice of a young dancer with Parkinson's. We call them dancers. We don't call them patients or other things. So they're called dancers. I know there's more things online, and the Dance for Parkinson's in New York, they organize regular classes online. But if you have more specific questions, you can ask Laura, my email, and I'll be happy to try to respond.
Also in Rome?
Sorry?
In Rome?
In Roma? In Italy? Yes, we work in Palazzo Spada, and sometimes in the archaeological sites of the Colosseo with Parchizone. It's an association. The other thing is that when you engage with this thing, we had to make sure that the people that want to, bring this initiative, which is always a dance organization and a museum, they would commit not to stop it. So this is really scary, but really it's what we go for. We say, if you want to call this thing Dance Well, please sign up that you're not gonna stop it. So it becomes a collective responsibility to find the funds, because we pay the teachers, we want to, and offer it free of charge, which is the other very important thing. And so far it goes on.
And can I ask, with whom do you collaborate in Czech Republic?
With Tanec Praha. So we're gonna start this August. Yeah.
In the Netherlands?
In the Netherlands, there's I don't know if they're still active. There was Mark Flemix in Rotterdam that was developing it. I'm not so informed if it's still going on. And Andrew Greenwood.
So Mark
Flemix.
and
Written with V. Flemix. Andrew Greenwood. Andrew Greenwood is British.
And again, how is it called? Like dance?
Dance Well. W-E-L-L. So we have another 15 minutes. Do you need, do you have a...
Yeah, no, I was just changing about the airwaves.
Yes, airwaves. So in the next future, when you will make your most beautiful first work, which has a length between 15 and 40 minutes, and it's beautifully filmed. You can apply to Airwaves, where there's a public call every year, and you will receive the link to that, and you will read, if you want, all the information. There's 44 members in 33 countries of the Europe, geographical Europe, active to encourage people that make dance works in their national context and are not known in the international scene yet to apply with a public call every year. Then there's a very complex process of viewing all the applications. We generally get around 700 applications. And out of those 700, there's a collective gathering of the members in October, at the end of October every year. For 4 days, we immerse ourselves in the process and identify 20 works for 4 days. But you prepare before, like you watch videos forever in September and October. We divide them. There's usually one person that watches everything. This year it will be 2. And then there's, this division. But imagine the opportunity, like when I received videos from Lithuania, I was amazed, because how else could I know what's going on in Lithuania if I had no access to those applications? Even if, they're not all masterpieces, but sometimes you get to know artists or you recognize people. I may recognize some of you in the next future that, are at work. Sometimes you find the same idea in Lithuania, in Turkey, and in Portugal. That's amazing. So it's a huge opportunities for the people involved to feel what's going on artistically in Europe. Then we identify 20 works, but every year there would be the possibility to have 60 or 3 times 20 good works to present. And these 20 works get invited the following year in April in a different city of Europe in what we call the Spring Forward Festival. And at that festival, a lot of programmers come and it generates a lot of invitations. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the socials where there's interviews and artists talking about their works. You can have a sense of what kind of works go through. It helps a lot to have a good video, as you can imagine, because if we see blurred images, that it's very, very hard. And to be in contact with the national partners or the internationals, if you know some.
What was the name of the festival?
Spring Forward. You will receive the link and you will find everything in there.
Perhaps also, Roberto, it's important to stress that if you don't get selected the first time, you could always apply the following year.
Yes, absolutely. Don't be discouraged. It doesn't mean we don't want to see you again. But sometimes there's so many circumstances that, impact the selection. And it's always a good opportunity to be seen, to be known.
But you can apply just one work.
One work at a time, yeah, as an author. But if you're dancing for 3 works, encourage all your 3 choreographers to apply. Only if you think it's worth it, yeah.
Does it also, is it providing like also collectives that you're part of? Like this thing of like applying only with one work. Like if I apply with a solo work, but then also I'm involved with a collective.
This is the tricky one, because sometimes we have 5 people in a collective bringing 5 works, and each of them had signed the 5. Well, one of them had signed 1 choreography, so they came with 5 works. No, it's up to you, as long as you apply with 1 work and your name. So maybe in the collective, we take into consideration that it's not just yours. Yeah. There's a few minutes left.
One last question.
Yeah.
Just one question.
I thought you were doing 5, and so I was.
No, just this was a way to say I have a
question. 2 days ago, Jordi was here talking about very different types of choreographic practices and artistic works, also sharing this commune space with an audience in a different way. When I thought about the last edition of Aerowaves with 25 works, I saw like 20 choreographers did their straightforward, upfront, very energetic, and I felt like there was a big juxtaposition between what Jordi was describing as new tendencies in choreographic work and the image I got from the last Aerowaves. Are there any considerations about Aerowaves for the future to open up to different formats or to, I don't know, find different ways of doing something?
Yes, we are, and these introductions will come slowly. There's a consideration around creations that don't have professional dancers on stage, but they come through a choreographic score with new technologies that you hear, so you can activate a group of 50 people in a square, and it is a dance piece. So we would like to have those proposals too, as much as having performances that don't take place on a traditional stage and are not frontal. It takes time because, first of all, in the last few years, due to the pandemic, you know, there's been a different, let's say, response to the call. And I guess that has been impacted also, you know, the fact that we couldn't go much in the collectiveness and much in the, I mean, there was a lot of site-specific, but then, you know, you need to have a good video, and you need, because it is really judged upon the images and what you can share through a video. And sometimes the concept is beautiful, but then it's very hard to perceive it from those things. And then it depends also on where the Spring Forward Festival will take place. For instance, in 2023, we will be in Dublin, and everybody's telling us, don't think of doing anything outdoors unless you are, you know, coping with rain and things. Who knows? We will challenge that. But yes, definitely it's on its way. In fact, you had a question, do you think theaters are still the places where to present dance? I mean, this is an encouragement. Don't think that that's the only place at all. I think people have changed their attitude towards, and we have to be able to change in order to respond to the changes of societies. There's a lot of embodied traumas due to the COVID, due to the, let's say, ecological, economical, energetic crisis, the war. So, you know, we have to take that into consideration. We cannot think we should work always as we did in 2019. So if new formats, new idea come up as a response on how to share experiences with people, we have to be responsive to. So I would like to propose you for the last 5 minutes to connect with somebody next to you in pairs. Yes, and thank you, Walter, for talking about practices, because I would like to consider this. We all have a practice. So I would like to ask you to share with your colleague, what is the body of your practice? You can write down the questions. What is the body of your practice? What are the eyes of your practice? Eyes. Eyes of your practice. How do you feed your practice? And how does your practice reach out? So really imagining a body. I would like to invite you for 10 minutes, because we started a bit later, to share these questions and talk about your practices. Reaches out. With your partner. Just the two of you. Your practice, you decide. I mean, okay, I think, beautiful people, I think we are close to our end, and I hope you will take some of these discourses beyond and with you. Thank you so much for your time, for the time we shared. I hope we're gonna meet again.
Yeah.